Hi, everybody, and welcome to That Hashtag Show. I'm your resident Ranger writer, Tom, coming at you with a very special guest today. You might have seen him in such movies as Sinners and Saints, The Sensei, Three Ninjas, High Noon at Mega Mountain as Colt. But in regards to those of us here on Hashtag Show, you know him as the wonderful mullet-wearing young Rocky. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, I have Mike Lasky with me today.
I have a nice new ostentatious hairstyle that'll probably be made fun of in the next 30 years. So perfect.
Mike, thank you for taking time with us today, trying to catch up with you. It's great to see you.
Pleasure's all mine, guys. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, like I said, he played young Rocky, during the famous Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers up into the Zeo Quest stuff. How was it that you got on the show?
Yeah, so, it was a pretty interesting experience for a kid to go through. But as I understand how Power Rangers cast regularly now, it's not all of that unique of an experience to really any other Ranger. Basically what happened is they do what's called a cattle call, which is basically all comers, right? So you can be a professional actor, you can be just some kid who knows karate and wants to try out. They're willing to see all the tapes. I think this audition process was pretty tedious because not only were they looking for kids, they're looking for kids that can act and do martial arts, but also looked like the other Rangers. So my experience with auditioning for the Power Rangers, man, I think there was like 10 or 12 auditions because they're trying to pair you up with different kids to make sure that you work off of each other well as having to look like the beautiful Steve Cardenas.
He is quite guapo. Cool. So you said 12 auditions. That's an awful lot. What was it like on set when you were doing filming?
It's basically a kid in a candy store when it comes to that. One of the unique experiences of my particular time on Power Rangers was that not only was I on the biggest show in the world at that point, but that show was also geared towards my age bracket that I was actually in. So I was in the show when it was #1 on the earth, and I loved the show going into it. Who didn't want to be a Power Ranger? So a lot of my experiences there were just trying to contain myself and not make a fool of myself in front of all the people who I admired at that time. All the Power Rangers, especially all the people on the set, because a lot of people don't understand that acting is a fun job, but it's still a job, right? So you got to go on there, and you might want to go full tilt and punch all the buttons on the command center and stuff, but you don't really get to do that.
You need some buttons, you can push those.
Yeah, there we go. Oh, those are the ones I can push, finally.
So did Power Rangers lead you to Mega Mountain, or was that a nice
the Power Rangers came in. Power Rangers came in before Three Ninjas, and by the time I think I was about 11 years old when I was in Power Rangers, and probably around 13 or 14, I think, when I was in Three Ninjas. So Power Rangers definitely came before. And, kind of when it comes to acting, everybody's body of work compounds on top of each other. So I'm sure having been on Power Rangers was definitely a good thing to have on my resume, especially moving in to Three Ninjas. So I would imagine it did help me immensely. Really, though, Three Ninjas was very similar to Power Rangers at that time, where they were just looking for kids who can kick ass. And that's what's hard, is finding kids who it's a different kind of theater triple threat, right? Where it's usually singing, dancing, and acting. And now we've got acting, martial arts, and being a kid.
Nice. So any fun anecdotes or things from on set from Power Rangers that you can remember, something cool happening, something unique, and even from Mega Mountain as well?
Well, yeah, Power Rangers going onto a set of a television show as a kid, in general, is always going to be a weirdly unique experience because, when you're a child, you're going on to these adult-oriented spaces, right? Even the people who are playing teenagers in Power Rangers were already adults at that time, so they have their adult jokes, they have their adult language. So when jumping onto the set of Power Rangers as an 11-year-old, what really I remember that was funny is just everybody trying to be on their best behavior around kids. Because you got grips, you've got wardrobe, you've got tons of people on this set. They're all used to swearing and smoking and doing their sort of blue or lewd jokes. But you can't do that when kids are on set. So oftentimes we'd find funny stuff like in the school books. You would open them up and there'd be like stupid messages to like other cast members and stuff that had swear words and stuff in it. And you're just looking at this as an 11-year-old going, oh wow, these are my idols who are playing the best, the most chaste kids on TV. But exactly. And then sometimes you open it up and you're like, oh wow, there's lewd drawings in my school book. So I would say that's kind of like the funniest moment going on to Power Rangers. But probably the best memories I have on Power Rangers is just at the time them closing down a water park called Raging Waters that I grew up near in one of the episodes for us to film there. And at the end of the day, they turned down all of the slides and let the little kids, cast members, just slide down without any lines. And I was like, this is the best thing ever. It was a pretty unique experience. Little did I know that, not that 3 or 4 years later, they'd shut down another amusement park for the kids so that we can film in it. And then there's Three Ninjas High Noon.
About that. That is so cool. So in between all the acting and everything, you've done some other projects, but you're also an MMA fighter.
Correct. Yeah, I started mixed martial arts probably 7 or 8 years ago, and I've always been studying martial arts through my teenage years. Never really stopped training, and I worked my way up through the circuit, and I became a 5-time mixed martial arts champion in 2 different weight class divisions. Number 1 ranked fighter in the state of Utah, number 3rd ranked fighter on the West Coast. So I guess you could say I did pretty well. I've worked hard to become good, so I'm glad that it sort of worked out for me.
Now, because of that, all that teaching and training, you're now passing that on to the next generation. If I'm correct, you just recently opened up a studio and academy in Utah.
Correct. Yeah. So, I think part of the life cycle of being a martial artist starts with being a student, moves to being a fighter, and then finally it moves on to being a teacher. So me being the ever consummate martial artist from the age of 2 years old, I always kind of knew that was the direction of where I was going to end up going. My retirement plan was always to teach at a martial arts studio until I didn't wake up one morning. So we're teaching kids at the OMA Ranger Academy here in Pleasant Grove, Utah. We also have a private academy in Burbank, California that my father teaches at. So if you want to learn from one of the guys who taught me growing up, you're in California, you could go to Burbank. If you're in Utah, you could come on over to me. It's pretty cool. What we do is we use the fact that I was in Power Rangers and Three Ninjas to excite kids to get started in martial arts. And then we do a bait and switch, and we teach them all of the hard work, discipline, and sacrifice it took to become an MMA champion. We kind of get the best of both worlds here.
Now, being that consummate student that you were, and being in that exact age group at that exact time when you were on Power Rangers, what was it like when you got offset and back into the dojo and you saw all these kids coming in and going, I want to be a Power Ranger, yeah, and watch them fizzle out real quick?
Growing up in Los Angeles, you grow up around a lot of people who are have similar goals as you, especially if you're in a martial arts studio in Los Angeles in the early 90s, back in the boom of action movies and stuff. So you'd think you would come home as an 11-year-old and be a celebrity, and everybody would be like, oh, cool, man, you got to do this thing, when it's actually the exact opposite. Everybody's a bit jealous that you got such a big part, and they all want to be that person. So, there can be a little bit of like a reality show style drama in a martial arts studio after that. But you know what? If you're a competitive individual, you're used to that kind of competitive pressure. And the people who can't take it tend to fall to the wayside, while others just keep pushing on.
Well, speaking of competition, I believe you have a certain fight coming up in a few months. Do you want to give everybody the full backstory on that so they can understand what's going on here with you and Blake?
Yeah, so what we're talking about here is then ideally in January, right? We're going through a bit of a pandemic right now,
Right.
so I always have to caveat this with COVID permitting. But as of right now, we were set for January. Blake Foster and I, the Blue Turbo Ranger, are going to fight for the 205 title, the light heavyweight title, in a mixed martial arts cage. This is a real fight. This isn't a sparring match. This isn't a faux wrestling match or a worked wrestling match. This is legitimately a real MMA fight. And, you know, not only are we fighting for the 205 title, but Blake and I have been in competition with each other all of our lives. Speaking of that competition that we talked about earlier, you know, we looked similar. We were at similar ages, so we went on auditions together. Sometimes I would book stuff. I'd beat him out of stuff. Sometimes he'd beat me out of stuff. But so we always had that pressure, but we've always been friends. So we like to razz each other whenever we see each other. And we just decided that it would be a fun event for the fans of Power Rangers, for the fans of MMA, to see two of their childhood heroes sort of duke it out for the unofficial title of the world's toughest Ranger. And we're real excited. I mean, we kind of decided to do this about 2 years ago, and then we've been working on it, and obviously stuff gets in the way. But it's turning out to be a bigger and bigger event. You're probably going to be able to see it live streamed on pay-per-view online. We're having Jason David Frank do the ring announcement, so he's going to announce us coming out. Steve Cardenas and Mike Rome of WWE fame, they're going to commentate on the fight. And it's going to be in the fight capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada.
Wow, you even got your older Ranger self to come in and help in out on this. I had no idea Steve was getting in on this too.
Oh yeah, I mean they're just as excited about it as we are. Once they, you know, I think they were a little bit timid about it when they first heard. They were like, this is silly. And you guys probably, that, you know, a lot of times when you talk about MMA fights to people who aren't used to MMA fights, they think that there's some bad blood between us and that we're looking to like seriously harm each other. And, you know, that's not the case. Once I think they found out that, you know, this is all for bragging rights, this is real, we're both going to look to win, but it's not like we hate each other and we're going to like slander each other in the press or anything like that. They were much more cool about smoothing it over. And at this point, I mean, I know two of the original cast members are going to be there, and I don't doubt that about 4 or 5 more are going to end up making appearances there, just as spectators.
Oh, yeah.
To have fun. Yeah.
That's the one best thing about the Ranger community is that once you do put on that morpher or spandex, you really do become part of a family. You can definitely tell, like, when you go to all the conventions and whatnot. Now, if I remember correctly, last time you talked with us for Hashtag Show was actually your first convention, Power Morphicon 2018, right?
That is correct. Yeah, Power Morphicon 2018 was the first time I not only have gone to a convention as a personality, but actually my first time attending a convention, period. So it was like a double whammy for me.
So what's it been like for you pre-corona? You know, trying to get balanced time between the dojo and being a husband, trying to get out to conventions. What's it like now?
Well, it's a lot of fun. It's always fun going and seeing fans in person, signing autographs and having fun and chatting about sort of like the good old days and the things that make them tick. It's also fun when they bring me weapons. They're like, hey, do you know how to use this weapon? And I was like, well, we'll see. They could be like fanciful or fictional weapons and stuff like that. So it's really fun when it goes, but it's not something that I necessarily make a living off of. Obviously, you know, I run a business. I have my martial arts students, my fighting, as you said, my marriage. So it's a lot of fun when I get to go out. But, you know, if it doesn't happen, then it doesn't happen. And I just hang out with people basically in the same way we are here in the online community. I'm very vocal and interactive on my social media pages. Generally, if you comment, I joke back with you. So for me, it's just like a real life version of what I've already been doing with the fans online. So it's a pretty easy transition.
Now, speaking of also transitions, back when you did do MMA, when you originally, you were in the lightweight, correct?
Yeah, I think my first fight was in the welterweight division. And the majority of my championship belts come from that. But where I was supposed to be competitive at was definitely 155. So my last fight that I did was at that 155 weight category. And that's sort of where I had planned to stay, honestly.
So what is the difference for you now with all your training regimen, or has any of your moves had to change with fighting in this 205 division?
Yeah, so obviously the weight jump from 155 to 205 is a fairly big one. And Blake, you know, is a strong guy. He's tall. He's coming and dropping a lot of weight to meet that 205 category. So for me, the way the training is different is it's a lot of eating and a lot of lifting. Usually I use my fight camp to lean out and get down to weight. Now I have to kind of like pause in between sessions and like scarf down food to make sure that I'm as thick as possible as I go in there. Moving this muscle around means a lot more oxygen intake in order to power those muscles. So I tend to get winded a little bit quicker, but we're working on different tricks to raise up that kind of VO2, that blood oxygen level, to make sure that by the time I walk into that cage, I'm dumping Blake on his head, and you know, I'm hitting him with a planet, and it doesn't matter.
Wonderful, wonderful. So, wow, seriously, yeah, that I'm just thinking it's just the jump from there to there, because I can remember back when I was in that original weight class to where I am now. But anyway, not a fighter, just saying. Memories. Well, this is fantastic. I mean, I'm really looking forward to it. Now, you already explained JDF is going to be the ring announcer, so that way we've seen some buzz on the internet. Oh, JDF's going to ref and everything. I know personally that in Las Vegas, he can't come in as a guest ref on that. So, I appreciate
exactly. As much fun as it would be to try to get someone like Austin St. John or another member of the Ranger alumni, when it comes to Vegas, and you know, people are going to be putting bets on this fight, right? So we got to make sure that somebody professional is in there from the state who has no skin in the game, to make sure that, you know, they're reffing fairly, because you know, we don't want Blake to come in there with a set of brass knuckles underneath his MMA gloves, because let's face it, you know, he's going to need it.
Possibly, more than likely. I do believe the Vegas odds are in your favor. Just saying.
I believe so as well. It's going to be a fun fight because he is bigger, he is stronger, and he does have some martial arts experience. And whereas I'm smaller and technically weaker, I have a lot more experience in that realm. So it's really just the level of whether or not you think experience outshines strength. So it's a real, for lack of a better term, David and Goliath situation here. So we'll see what happens.
You took the words right out of my mouth. I can't believe it. You have any idea what I'm going to say next?
No, I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to say next is, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. I really greatly appreciate it. Why don't you tell everybody where they can follow you at on social media? I know basically everywhere, because you are splattered everywhere, but where in particular can we find all your great stuff right now?
So when it comes to following me on the internet, like we said, I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm a little bit of an internet whore in that way. I just don't have an OnlyFans. Basically, you can find me on Instagram, search Big Bang Mike _, as well as Twitter. On Facebook, you can find me at facebook.com/Big Bang Mike Rocks. And then on TikTok, you can find me at just plain old at Big Bang Mike.
Wonderful. And folks, if you need to find me, you can find me at Off the Cuff Gaming on Facebook, and also here on That Hashtag Show. Mike, thank you so much for taking the time today. Greatly appreciated it. Make sure to stay to That Hashtag Show for everything trending in geek pop culture.